Okay, I wanted to make a little video this morning because I've just been obsessed with this idea. I've just been ruminating, contemplating, thinking about usually a lot of different topics, but this one is a personalist ethic. So I reached out to a friend the other day who's actually an ethicist, and I said, has somebody written on this personalist ethic? And he talked to me about, Martin Luther King, Pope John Paul II, well-known personalists. I know a lot of people who've written about personalism, and this could just be an ignorance thing. So if there are people out there that know, specifically people writing about a personalist ethic or a personalist epistemology, for lack of a better word, but a personalist epistemology would actually be in a lot of ways completely opposite or on the other end of the field of what knowing is from traditional epistemology, because traditional epistemology, I think, is rooted in the intellect or the mind versus the person. So I mean, it would be a very truncated knowing, and potentially like a and kind of anti-knowing. So what I want to do in this video, 1.5 minute in, is there's 3 things I want to bring up, and then I want to just see if any of it gets any traction or there's a unity behind it, and see if anybody has any ideas or just kind of work it out, stream of consciousness. So there's this guy. He's somewhat local to me, Minneapolis. I haven't been able to connect with him, but I'm working on it. I hope to connect with him. His name's Graham Partum, and he's a really interesting guy. I feel a lot of resonance with him, but he has this Substack called Nurture's Sabbath Empire, and he has this ongoing essay, which I should go back and read through all of it, but life is busy. I clicked on this last one, this essay number 7, Nurturers of the Real. And he has 2 quotes at the beginning of it that I want to read. And then I have another quote. And then I have an idea that I want to just put out there. That's the mosaic I'm playing out. And then, do you see the picture? If I put out that mosaic, do you see it? So those are the pieces. Those are the multiplicity. Do you see the unity behind the multiplicity that I'm laying out? So this first is, here's this quote. God gives us his life, not ideas, doctrines, rules. At home, when all is done, life itself begins. Christ was homeless not because he despised simple happiness. He did have a childhood, family, home, but because he was at home everywhere in the world, which his Father created as the home of man. And that's from Father Alexander Schmemman, from his journals. And then here's another one. Over and over again, spring after spring, the questing mind, idealist and visionary, must pass through the planting to become nurturer of the real. Great quote. Wendell, Unsettling of America. Nurturers of the real. And then the other quote that I want to put out there is, I heard once first through Rogan, and he quotes it quite often. There's a few quotes he goes back to, which is, man, that's how my mind works. So, but it's Miyamoto Mushashi. If you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything. So if you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything. And one other piece, I'll bring this in, because this is also, I've been talking to people about this, and this gets really, all of these things to me get to the heart of a personalist ethic and a personalist metaphysic. It's persons all the way down, not turtles all the way down, persons. If persons are turtles, sure. So I once heard Father Stephen Freeman say this: no one ever knows anything in general, they only ever know anything in particular. And another way to illustrate that very much is Brothers Karamazov, when Father Zosima is giving the parable of the great philanthropist who loves mankind but can't stand to be alone in another room with another human being and recoils at their touch. So I love mankind, I love man, I'm benevolent, but I hate a person, or I don't like a person. And I think this is all very tied to what Jordan Daniel Wood said in his Neo-Chalcedonian Maximus Christology and book The Whole Mystery of Christ, and what I've heard him say in interviews is that the very interesting thing, I need to just find this clip and quote him directly because I think it's good. Or you could just quote Maximus's Ambiguum, but the greatest thing about the incarnation isn't so much that it shows the particularity of the universal, but that it shows the universality in every particular. That's the pattern of Christ, is it's showing the universality in every particular. God became man is the universality becoming particular, and then that fractal event, that morphic field, that first crystal, then goes out and crystallizes the entire cosmos, Christ in me, Christ consciousness, which is, if you know the way broadly, you'll see it in everything. This is why I think somewhat, I was talking to some friends at church, of why outside of the categories of self-identity and I'm a Christian, I'm a man, I'm a whatever, I'm kind of comfortable in any conversation because a little bit, and this isn't like to pat myself on the back, but it's a little bit of the Christ consciousness. I see Christ in everything. When you see, you can bridge, when you are focused on, this is what seeing has. There are some aspects to seeing. So, PVK, if you watch this, I would say consciousness, one thing that I've been toying with in my mind and playing around and what seems to resonate with me is that consciousness is memory and forgetting. It's remembering, quite literally remembering in a non-Gnostic physical way, at least for us, or a member, not even physical, a body, a member of a body. To remember, to put that together, is to coalesce differences, parts, particularities, multiplicity into a unity. It's a remembering. But part of that remembering that happens, because everything is a constant field back and forth, is forgetting. Remembering and forgetting are part of the same act, part of the same event, part of the same thing, which is consciousness. To remember, you have to bring things out of infinity into a particularity, out of, the universality into the particular, but then that can never become some ossified thing or it dies. And so there's a constant aspect of forgetting, and that's kind of what consciousness is. And so what I think, that's part of what enables thinking and right and left brain stuff. You can't, if you get so much into left brain, it gets ossified. And you can't, and it has no life. You can't, it's not the beginner's mind. It's not unknowing what you know, which you got to get into the right brain to see error correction, The cave you fear to enter holds the answer that you seek. This is why ego and fear and control, and I mean, this gets into even that great lecture, which I'll try to remember to post in here, I guess, of Dr. E. McGilchrist talking to someone else. I don't know. Sherry's been talking about it a lot, but it's on enchantment. And it's the difference between enchantment and will. The enchanted consciousness, the Christ consciousness, and the willing, fearful, afraid, controlling consciousness. Those are gonna look at two very different things. So then you'll get caught up in this world of self-identity. Like, this person's a Christian, this person's a conservative, this person's a liberal, this person is pro-vax, this person is anti-vax. And you're in this either-or objectivist world where you're treating ideas as objects and you're using them to manipulate and control your world, and it's rooted in fear. This is all POS theology stuff. Or you can get in the Christ consciousness mind, where you see the way broadly and you'll see it in everything. I don't even care if you call it Christ. Say if you know the way broadly, you'll see it in everything. And then you're at home everywhere, because the world is your home. You see grace everywhere. You see love everywhere. You see gift everywhere. But you see its correlate. You see its degradation. You see its decomposition. Because that's always going to happen. That's always there. It's the spiral. There's a qualitative fullness and a relationship and a wu-wei. I think that's the term. It's a Buddhist term. I once heard it from like an Alan Watts video, I think. Cutting with the grain. There's a way to live in harmony with... This came up in the conversation that we had with Nate and Kyle. I think Kyle. I believe that's his name. I don't know him that well. I just met him yesterday. And Karen, about that hideous strength. Christ and Antichrist. diversity is always a good thing. You need diversity. You can't have unity without diversity. It's just uniformity. You have a monadic one. There's no discernment. If everything is one, you can't discern between anything else. St. Paul, 1 Corinthians 11, I think, 17 and 18. I hear the divisions exist among you, and of course they must, because how can you discern anything if there's not difference? But there ought not to be schism. You ought to not divide over these ideas. So if you have this constant, so you need unity, you need difference, but then you have to discern between those things. But if you see the way broadly, you'll see it in everything. So even in the things you're discerning, the way broadly, Christ, whatever, there's something right in the left hand of God. There's a higher unity. This is why I've said before that God, Chad will say, the God of your understanding. Great. But there is a higher love, a higher unity. Behind any discernment, what is the unity behind any distinction, is a way I've said it before. To me, that is Christ consciousness. That's being at home everywhere. That is where you can never, there's no othering, there's no distinction, there's no judgment, is another way to say it, that is so great that loses the higher unity. Because there has to be a higher unity. There has to be. There cannot be judgment without a higher unity. What are you distinguishing? So there's always an apophatic, unspoken higher unity behind everything. Love. God. Whatever. There can't be a monadic one. There is a monadic one behind everything, but it's utterly ineffable. It's the essence of God. Whatever. But that always exists. Even that exists in a relationship with a non-monad. It has to. So all that to say, what I ultimately am working toward with a personalist ethic and a personalist knowing and a personalist way of being is I would love to stop. I don't even want to will to stop the culture war because I know that's a myth. But I would love to contribute to Dialogos, and sorry, listen, if even my friend Tim watches this, who gets fed up with any little corner knowledge, I'm sorry, just speaking stream of consciousness, I'm sorry I said Dialogos. I want to lend toward, because this is the life and death, the spiral of language, you got to do it. You start using it, it starts using you, you get fed up with it, it becomes groupthink. Make up new words. This is why all knowing is personalist. You won't have any idea what I'm talking about unless you love me, unless you know me. And the same goes for everyone. There isn't a definitional objective understanding of anything, because that's a dead object. That's a word is a monad, and it has no life in it. And a word can't even be a monad because it's a unity of letters, of multiplicity, or of symbols, or of whatever. It's unities and distinctions all the way down. Persons. Relationships. Relational ontology. What I want to try to facilitate and encourage is, and this even came up in the just chatting things, is how do we talk with whom we disagree? Or to quote another great quote that I love, is the last remaining form of bigotry. The last acceptable remaining form of bigotry is against those with whom you disagree. It's a great quote. I first heard it on an Enneagram podcast many, many years ago, and I don't even like to tell people who said it, because then, because of the culture war stuff, you'll say, who said it? What camp are they in? What self-identifying group are they in? Is that good? Is that bad? Judgment. Closed off. You don't see the higher unity. You don't see the higher love. You don't see Christ in the other. You'll either distinguish it yay or nay, either orism, objectivism, and the mind shuts down. You stop thinking. You're trapped in your groupthink, the prison made of thoughts. And you can't think your way out of a prison made of thoughts. You need the beginner's mind, the apophatic, unknowing, fall off the Dunning-Kruger peak of Mount Stupid. And once you do that, you're able to engage with people. You're like Sherry says, you want to know what you don't want to know. You're in the non-dual beginner's mind where everything is radical empiricism and wonder. You're in enchantment. You're in the enchanted world. You're in fairy story. Oh, my coins have turned to crumpled leaves in my pocket. Mirrors, day and night. But there's no fear. What is there to fear? Because you're living in a world of faith. I'm home everywhere. It doesn't matter. I don't understand. I understand this world in a way where my will can control it and predict, and I can try to guard myself from unwanted outcomes, no, you're in fairyland. Congratulations. I want to move toward the, whatever, age of Aquarius. I want to move toward that kind of consciousness. I want to get people out of the spirit that creates, where war is the inability to have conflict, to quote Dylan Morin. I want to move to the kind of consciousness where war is not possible, because your enemy is your brother. Christ consciousness. All right, I'll stop it there. It's over 15 minutes. I probably talked too long.